one of the fundamental rules of improv is like you always say yes, never say no. So, when you're interacting with a guest, you just say yes and you figure it out. Improv is kind of the best sort of foundational tool for, I would say, any early careered hospitality professional. This marketing strategy, the menu, your menu, whatever it is, your food menu, your beverage menu, that is your marketing tool. It is the tool that you are using to sort of highlight the things that you do. And your restaurant, mom and pops, are so important to just the diversity and the inclusion in this city, in any city, and I want to see people successful. I'm hopeful to kind of like use my knowledge for, something bigger than just like a corporate machine that prints a lot of money.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Hospitality Bites. I am your host, self-proclaimed hospitality hustler, mompreneur, and founder of Hospitality Bites Media, and the host of Hospitality Bites. As you all know, I take immense pride in highlighting individuals from all aspects of our industry with the goal of humanizing it. My guests have included individuals from everywhere: bartenders, chefs, food media personalities, cookbook authors, consultants, and advocates. And today we are joined by a seasoned hospitality leader and beverage strategist with over 20 years of experience in enhancing beverage programs across the country. He has worked throughout the restaurant industry from the floor to behind the bar and into the wine cellar. As the founder of Innovative Beverage Strategies, he partners with restaurants to optimize their beverage offerings, focusing on operational efficiency, sales strategies, and guest engagement to drive profitability. He is successful in managing multi-million-dollar beverage programs at major food groups' flagship properties, demonstrating his expertise in creating competitive advantages that resonate with guests long after they leave the table. So please welcome to the show, Brad Nugent. Brad, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Colleen.
I really appreciate it. Brad reached out to me a few weeks ago, but I was in the thick of all the things, summer vacation, things are starting to slowly die down. So now we were able to chat, and I'm just really grateful for you taking time out of your day to share about your journey through the industry and where you are now.
My pleasure. My pleasure. This is what real life looks like, right?
It is real life.
Kids at home, you understand,
Yes. And like I told Brad, and for those of you that might hear, there's screeching children in the back because we have 2 more weeks until school starts.
We're counting down the days, Colleen.
Yes, definitely counting down the days. I will miss her though, because she is a lot of fun, but I'm also ready to have some regular, normal working hours.
A little bit of time, just a little bit of time.
Just a little bit, right?
Yes.
All right,
exactly.
Let's just jump right into it. And let's start with your background and why you entered the hospitality space to begin with.
Sure. A long origin story, very short, right? My first job was in a restaurant in my local town. I'm 15 years old. I signed the paperwork in the school office to be able to work part-time, right? Remember when you had to do that? And I got a job as a dishwasher at my local sort of lunch counter, and I worked there for about 4 years, all through high school, and washing dishes and being a prep cook, and eventually became a waiter there and, made a little bit of money, but just kind of got introduced to restaurants there. I went to school in Manhattan. I was a theater major at Marymount Manhattan College. And to help put myself through college, I got a job in a restaurant on the Upper West Side. I was taking delivery orders. This was before technology, right? Before you could order on your phone. You literally had to call the restaurant and place your order for delivery. So I would answer the phone and I would put in 100 or 200 delivery orders a night. And then, slowly from there, I got promoted to be a waiter, right? And started making real money in Manhattan. And then one day the bartender didn't show up and the manager sort of said, "Brad, you're going to bartend today." And, I think I was 19 or 20 when that happened. So I started bartending in New York before I was legally able to drink, right?
I know, so scary.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very typical industry. Bartender's not here. Who's going to bartend? You're going to bartend. So, kind of from there, like I said, I was going to school and it was feeling a bit disenfranchised with the whole acting thing, just kind of was wondering what I had gotten myself into and, kind of thought, this probably wasn't the best path forward for me. Just didn't feel right anymore, And I ended up going to a fancy dinner with my then girlfriend. We had a gift certificate and the gift certificate was for $300.
And was it paper?
It was definitely paper in an envelope, right? It was a charity gift certificate. It expired, which is why her mother gave it to her, right? Take your boyfriend out to a nice meal. We went to Gotham Bar and Grill. So it was for $300. And at the time I thought that was a ludicrous amount of money to spend on a dinner. How are we possibly going to spend $300 on dinner? And she said, "We're going to order a bottle of wine." And I said, "Okay, sure." So we went to this restaurant, which was at the time, the fanciest restaurant I had ever been to in my entire life, right? There was linen, there were like polished waiters, it was the whole thing. And she ordered a bottle of wine and the sommelier came over and did his thing. And I remember thinking to myself, he's on stage. That's cool. Like he's performing, right?
Mhm.
I want to do that, right? So I had to wait to go to wine school. I literally had to wait a year to turn 21 to enroll in wine classes because you had to be 21 to enroll. So I did, and I took enrolled into WSET and took the first three levels, and then kind of took off from there. I got an internship at Balthazar, and I worked at Balthazar for free. Once again, an old industry
Nice.
standard. When you were that wasn't illegal to work in a restaurant for free. You just
Mhm.
sort of donated your time to hopefully get a leg up. And also, this is in a time in New York where there weren't a whole lot of wine jobs. Sommelier jobs didn't exist then
Okay.
like they do now, right? There just weren't a lot of restaurants that could support that role.
Oh, right, and afford the person to do it.
Correct. And like wine was still, I mean, wine was insider culture, right? There were collectors, there were wine aficionados, but it wasn't as pop culture as it has been. I would argue maybe it's not as pop culture now, but it's been waning for a little bit of time. But back then it was certainly not integrated the way it is now in culture, the culture of restaurants that we see today.
I mean, I wasn't exposed to anything of that nature until well after I had been in the industry for probably at least 10 years, that there was people that went to school and had education in alcohol. I was just shown it and told just to sell it
Yeah.
versus and
This
that
is
was kind of for
important.
me a vice of like I just indulged in it and I didn't understand what I was actually consuming ever.
Sure. And I would imagine that was on every front, right? It wasn't
Mhm.
just wine, but it was also spirits, it was beer, it was
Right.
like the whole thing. Yeah, for sure. So anyway, worked at Balthazar for a year for free, showing up at 6 in the morning on Saturday and Sunday to restock the fridges above the coffee station. The barista hated us on a busy Saturday, Sunday service, like just slinging coffee. And we have to like put our ladder in front of his, espresso machine and like get up to the coolers above him. Wasn't great. But anyway, after a year of that, I got hired at Porterhouse. He introduced me to the wine director at Porterhouse, Beth Von Benz. And, she hired me as the opening somm. And that's kind of where my career started, right? So this was in late '05, early '06.
It's interesting that you wanted to be in theater in some capacity. Every person I've had on this show in the front of house position, whether it's operations, they are a beverage, they're a server, or, whatever it is, we all have this ability to put on a show, whatever our role is. And I loved theater as a kid. I actually received an award in eighth grade for theater, but I didn't follow through with it. And sometimes I'm like, oh man, that would have been kind of fun to go into acting and things like that. But I realized that's where my niche was engaging with people and being able to do what they were paying for, right? Like they're paying for us to take care of them. And I used to be embarrassed. And he and I were just chatting a little bit before this that there was a little bit of shame of being a waitress. But then I realized I was making good money because I was good at what I did and I was able to sell the experience. It's not a ticket and they're not at like some fancy theater. I'm at a beach bar when I first started out, but I had people that would come back and I made a lot of money in 3 months. And I was like, "Okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, is engaging and sharing with people." And it sounds like for you, you realize, "Oh, man, this is cool. This is performance art in some capacity."
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, it was improv, right? It's
Perfect.
right. I mean, one of the fundamental rules of improv is like you always say yes, never say no,
I forgot. It
right?
is. That's so true.
So when you're interacting with a guest, you just say yes and you figure it out, right? And is improv is kind of the best sort of foundational tool for I would say any early careered hospitality professional, right? Take an improv class.
That is I have not had anyone say that to my knowledge, or if you have told me, I apologize to that person. I've never heard someone call it like an improv exercise, like, essentially.
Yeah.
That's so smart.
Yep. Well, because you're just reading the person next to you, right? You're reading
Yes.
the person across from you. There's also an improv exercise where everything is a no. So you have to really, really work hard to get the improv all
Really?
down, which can be like super helpful for really difficult guests, right?
So, can you kind of, like, walk me through what an improv no would be? Like, how would I so how does that conversation work?
So we could run it right here, right? How
Okay.
are you tonight, Colleen? Or you could ask me questions.
Alright, how are you doing today?
Fine.
That was nothing. So you are a miserable person. Okay. Why are you just fine today?
I don't know. Can you just tell me the specials?
Man. See, this is where a customer
Right.
like
It's
that,
right. Right. Exactly. So it's like you have to like struggle. You're
I know, like my
really like,
words.
well, and how do you turn that person around? You know?
But see, and this is where like they kill 'em with kindness type thing. I would probably oversell, be like, "Oh, I'm so glad you asked me how I'm doing, even though
Sure.
you didn't say anything. I'm doing
Sure.
great. These are
Yeah.
our specials today."
Yeah. Well, you got to keep it on, right? You have to
Yeah.
keep that performance going. You have to stay engaged or try to, and you have to stay positive, and like despite whatever somebody's giving you.
So
So
I hope that in some capacity that you put improv into whatever else that you're doing with your business because that is such a cool sell of I mean, as for companies to want to do with their staff.
yeah, well, sales training is an interesting thing this way, right?
Yeah.
you know, everyone in the wine world, everyone talks about education, wine
Mhm.
education. And look, wine education is very, very important. But the reality for most restaurants is there's a million resources that you can provide your staff for wine education. What you should be providing your staff with is sales training and sales training specific to your restaurant, right? What
Yeah.
makes you unique? What makes you special? What are your offerings that your comp set doesn't have, or
Mhm.
what makes you special, and your server's ability to kind of talk about that to your guests. That's your competitive edge.
So true. Oh, I love that. I mean, that improv thing, I'm telling you, I'm gonna take that to
Should, yeah,
wherever I go.
yeah, go. But improv, it's a thing.
So
So I mean,
smart.
that's kind of where my career started.
Cool.
I ended up spending 10 years in total at Porterhouse with Michael Lamonaco in the Time Warner building. And it was a a fancy steakhouse in the middle of Manhattan. It's like across the hall from Per Se and Masa, and became a destination restaurant for
Mhm.
celebrity, in New York. And I think that was a very formative experience for me, for a lot of different reasons. One, because I had a couple really great mentors in Beth and Michael early on, but then also because I stayed, right?
I was
Because I
gonna
was
say, is
there.
that when you decided to stay, or is that maybe when you're bucking up potentially wanting to get out of the industry?
Yeah. So we spoke earlier about this. What made me stay in the industry? Um, like all, I think, lifelong hospitality professionals, there's definitely that moment of existential crisis
Mhm.
where, you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I need to do anything else but this. I don't feel um healthy, and I don't feel this is not no longer a rewarding thing for me.
Mhm.
Once the adrenaline of service kind of wears off, where are you left? You're left missing a lot of nights and a lot of weekends and a lot of holidays, and you're sacrificing for family. And it's like the action of the life isn't enough to kind of carry you through anymore. And for me, I felt that I didn't have any skills that were valuable or that translated to any other industry. And I'm sure a lot of other people have felt that way at times, right? That, you don't feel good enough to do anything else. You feel less than. And so I think that was one of the reasons why I stayed originally. And I'm glad I did, because my career has been so rewarding since then, of like just the sort of gumption
Mhm.
of like sticking around and pushing through it has led to so many great opportunities and so many relationships, and a lot of very rewarding experiences and jobs, and the people that I've met. And I think it's interesting to say that I felt like I didn't have skills that were valuable or good for any other industry.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, for me especially, now that I'm also a mom and you are a dad as well, I would never want my kid to think that their skill sets were lacking or lack thereof because of the job that they were in. Because you have to have some sort of skill to be doing what you're doing and making money, right? Like you don't just make money because someone likes you. Typically, you have to be doing a good job. And I know for you to take the courses, to put the time in, to work for free for a year, those are all major sacrifices, as you said, and we're away from our families and we're giving other people experiences that not everybody can do. it takes a lot for us to be successful at our job and being able to engage with others that may be different than us, or we come from different backgrounds. And how do we all kind of like mesh in this weird ecosystem? We understand it.
Yeah.
And it's a really beautiful thing that for you to say that. And as a dad, for your kid to be hear you say, I didn't think I could transfer any of my skills, but look at you now, like that's really remarkable.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it speaks to, really being committed to something, right? And
Mhm.
really sort of like when you're passionate and you love something, you do it within,
Mhm.
when it's good and when it's bad,
100%. I mean, and for me, there was a lot of things I kind of had to work through navigating my way up. I don't like saying my way up through the industry. I've had a lot of weird paths. They've been lateral, they've been down, they've been up, right? Like I think all of us have. Was there anything that you had to face that was a bit of a struggle or a hurdle to kind of like overcome to get you to that next place or that you were battling yourself?
I mean, I think just, beyond the sort of like, local brand of, neuroses
Mhm.
and substance, right? Like substance is certainly a real thing, that once again, that the life, right?
Mhm.
The action and the adrenaline of service, and then the unwind that happens at the end of the night after shift, can certainly take over, right?
Mhm.
But I have to say, like, I feel like I have been so lucky, right? Just dumb luck. And some people would call that manifestation. Other
Mhm.
people would, call that entitlement, right? As a white man, well, of course, like everyone just looked at you and was like, "Yep, that's what a psalm should look like. You should be a psalm." Right.
Right, like the picture perfect version.
Of that, I haven't faced any discrimination, which runs rampant in the
Mhm.
industry, right? I mean, I could regale you with stories about all the things that I've saw where somebody didn't get promoted into a position they deserved just because they were an immigrant of some sort, right? So I for me, I've been so fortunate in my career that things have just kind of flowed for me. They've
Mhm.
just worked out. I've always made the joke to some of my closest friends that I've spent my career in wine and I'm probably the least knowledgeable about wine than all of my wine friends. Like I do not know nearly the amount about wine that they do, but I've always worked harder than them. And and that's like, there's so much to say about that, of just like you just show up every day and you just work hard. You get that call on the phone from the manager and they're like, "Hey, we need you to come in today." Yep, no problem. I'll
And
see you in an hour, right?
right, I mean, people that don't know about, the education that you're talking about and working hard to get there, being able to have the titles that you've had, you really do have to put the work in. It is not handed to you. I think there is that misconception for some people that it is like a handed you just you're given that's the next step, right? Well, no, you really have to prove your worth, and I know that you were familiar with Amy who was on my show, and she like you said, like, she wasn't handed things. She had to get her advanced psalm. She went and she did it because she's like, I wanted to shut it down when I walked in the door." And as you pointed out, you're a typical white man. Of course he is. That's what he should be doing. And for her, she was a young woman. It's like, "Oh, you should not be our psalm." But acknowledging that, I think, is so important about where you are now and what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's like no one talks about, everyone likes to talk about the sexy side of the job, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Everyone loves to talk about the expensive bottle they sold and what they tasted and who
right.
they served and what they know, but like
So funny.
no one talks about the 9 a.m. starts and receiving $55,000 worth of wine and putting it all away in the cellar and
Mhm,
counting inventory for hours and struggling with variance and like getting yelled at in the kitchen,
mhm.
like
Right.
all these things, like, no one romanticizes those things, and like you
Mhm.
have to it's a struggle sometimes to like stay the course and to work through those things, you
And
know?
you talked about it briefly, navigating that afterlife work culture. And if we're going to stick in it, then I have to maybe prioritize other things to be successful. And for me, I fell on my face really hard and I had to pick myself back up. If I'm going to be in this industry, I got to get it together and I need to learn and I need to understand myself better. I need to understand what it is that I want. And when I realized I just want to be in the front of house and I want to learn about other people, that's when I kind of was like cracking the code of this is a career. There are opportunities here to be successful. And I think that's kind of how what went into where you were with major food. My brain's dying.
Major food group.
Thank you. That's kind of how you found yourself there for a bit of time, right?
Yeah, I had worked at Porterhouse for 10 years, right? I was very comfortable. I had a very good schedule. I had an excellent boss and owner, right? I was very, very well taken care of. A longtime friend and mentor, a gentleman named John Slover, had opened the Seagram building for Major Food Group, right? The grill, the pool, the lobster club, and he was promoted to their corporate beverage director, and he needed a replacement for the Seagram building. And this is somebody that at that point I had known for about 15 years, right? And a very, very close friend of mine, one of my best friends on the planet. And he sort of called me and said, "Hey, I need a replacement." And, my reaction to him was like, "I'm not the guy for this job, man. This is a crazy job. This is Major Food Group. Like, this is a crazy landmark building. Like, the wine list is insane. I know nothing about German wine and Austrian wine. And I know really a very little about Burgundy. And these are huge, huge sections of this wine list, right?" I said, "I'm not the guy for you." And he said, "The wine is the easiest part of the job, Brad." He's like, "I need you to come in and install process and systems. And that's what you're great at, right? Like, you're the person that this building needs." And it took him weeks to convince me, right? To sort of begin the process of interviewing for this job. And I took it. I mean, the learning curve was insane, right? I thought that I was a professional. I thought that I had a career, and I was, but the a former chef friend of mine, when I was lamenting about this learning curve and how difficult this job was, and the expectations were so high, and I was under a microscope all the time, and nothing I could do was right. This chef friend of mine said, "Well, Brad, you just got called up to the New York Yankees, right? You were playing minor league ball, and now you're playing in the major league. So, like, yeah, that 96-mile-an-hour fastball comes in fast, right? You need to learn how to hit it, basically, right?" And that reframing for me was like everything. I was like, "Huh, interesting. Like, I actually have to level up now. Now I have to, like, increase my game, right?"
Right. And recognizing I'm not the smartest person in the room. There's a lot of room to grow and learn and be
Yep.
successful.
Yep. And I think that was, certainly another formative experience for me,
Hmm.
right? In that moment, to understand that, like, okay, I still have learning to do. I have growing to do, and I can be better, right? I can still get better. You
How
know,
long were you there for?
I started in 18, and, minus a little sabbatical over COVID, which most of us took, right?
Yeah.
I left in earlier this year in April
I was
of
saying,
20.
so you were there up until, which is a great way to segue into your current company that you are working with alongside your partner called Innovative Beverage Strategies. How did you evolve or like kind of navigate this launching pad for this, for what you're doing now?
Well, so, I didn't start a company with the intention of having a company.
Hmm.
Right? I just kind of started an LLC because I was like, okay, maybe there's some tax write-off benefits here, right? Of, work I do on the side. Most industry professionals, as you know, they're constantly side hustling, right?
Hmm.
Especially in the wine world. Like, you get a couple private clients, you do some seller work, you do some buying for people, you make a little bit of extra money, helps put the kids through college, whatever the thing is. Coming out of COVID, I had so many friends, operators, basically, either GMs, DOs, owners, operators, whatever, reach out to me. I mean, I could count 6, 7 reached out to me. "Hey, Brad, we're opening after COVID. We can't find anyone to hire in the beverage sphere, and we just need some help to, like, get open. We just
Hmm.
need somebody to kind of come in, do a little buying, do some process, systems, organization, get us started until we can find someone." And what was a little bit of a side hustle, kind of over the course of 2 years, started taking over, right? And the opportunity in front of me became so apparent so quickly that there's a real shortage of labor and shortage of talent in this field, right? I said to you earlier that the concept of a fractional beverage director, right? To be able to leverage my brain and my experience fractionally is everything for a lot of operators because they would never be able to afford me on their own, right?
Exactly. And he and I chatted about what it takes to be successful, whether it's your beverage program or your regular food menu or training for staff. Right now is a really hard time for a lot of businesses. And what's so important is that you are giving your business the best possible chance. But financially, it doesn't mean that you can bring on someone and pay them what they deserve to be paid to do that job. So you found this way to basically, like you said, like kind of sell what you know in a smaller format to help a company succeed to the best of their ability and
Yeah.
give them
And
the tools to do that.
I always say it's people ask me what kind of restaurants I work with, and I sort of jokingly always say, well, I work with normal restaurants because my experience with Major Food Group is so sort of drastic, right?
Right.
Those restaurants are
Big
not
brand.
what I right. They're not what I call normal restaurants.
Right.
It's like they're they're not the everyman, they're
Right.
complete
100%.
opposite. And the everyman is the man that needs the most help,
Hmm.
right? I say to lots of people that like what I do is not a silver bullet, right? It's not going to completely change your restaurant. It's not going to take you from losing money to being profitable. Beverage is one lever that you can kind of pull on as an operator, but in today's day and age, you need to pull on all the levers, right? Culinary better be good, service better be good, beverage better be good, and I mean, you know, kind of that's table stakes, right? Like being good at all those things is table stakes these days. And you go from there. And if you're not thinking about all those things or executing on all those things, you're probably going to close. That's the tough reality, right?
Right. And it's really unfortunate because of where we are in a financial status when it comes to tariffs and food and product and all the things that, oil for some people, for certain for oil that they use, whether it's what they're known for, whatever reason, is going to cost them potentially twice as much right now. And to be able to pay a beverage director or a supervisor person or a culinary supervisor, they may not be able to afford that because they gotta pay for the food to serve the people that are coming to the restaurant. So it really is gonna be interesting time for folks to kinda navigate these really rocky waters, and be successful. And I think what you're doing, and I told you this off camera, was you are very human about the whole thing. This is not all about P&Ls and what everything that you know and how to sell it to people. It's about, let's talk about who you are individually. And this is what I think can help you by doing this, that, and the other thing. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Well, and it's that's the conversation over and over again, right? It's like, okay, we all know that costs are rising. Labor's getting more expensive, food, wine, all of it, right? Like it's only going up, up, and up. So the question I ask operators all the time is, what are you doing to combat that? And don't tell me raise prices because that's the wrong answer, right? There
Mhm,
has to be other things besides that,
mhm.
And I mean, one of my sort of core philosophies is pricing, as I think pricing in beverage programs is just the most misunderstood, mismanaged widget of the entire thing. It's like there's a world that exists where you can actually lower prices and make more money, right? You can lower
Explain
price.
that. Explain that to
Right.
people because I of the same mindset, and we talked about it. I want you to explain why you say that.
Sure. So once again, this is very specific to your specific ecosystem,
Mhm.
right? So it's, a version of this can exist for every single operator out there. You just have to be tactical about how you install it and where you install it, right? So the first thing about pricing is it's a very set it and forget it mentality in the industry, right? Like in wine programs and spirit programs, you buy the case of vodka or whatever it is, the case of wine, you price it, you put it on your menu, you forget about it. You never look back at it again. And, you would never do that with a lobster, for example, right? Because the market price of lobster shifts, right? So you bought a case of wine, the price isn't shifting. The cost is the cost, but the market does shift. What the market will bear will go up and down, right? So first of all, you should be looking at pricing all the time and you should be adjusting pricing all the time, right? And that's how you optimize. So in the example of like lowering prices, right? There are places where you have sales velocity, right? There are places on your menu where you sell a lot of the thing, whatever the thing is. So let's say Sancerre. That's very popular, trendy, hot. Everyone wants to drink Sancerre. Okay, great. So you're selling a ton of Sancerre. You would never lower your price on Sancerre. That would be counterintuitive, right? But what's the thing that's just above the Sancerre? So let's say you have two Sancerres, right? Or maybe you have a domestic Sauvignon Blanc and you have Sancerre, right? So if you're selling a ton of Sancerre and the domestic Sauvignon Blanc is more expensive, right? Just lower the price of the domestic to a point where you're going to make more profit on it than on the Sancerre. Create perceived value and use that as a step. Train your staff on it and use that as a lever for your staff to say, hey, I know you're here all the time and you really like the Sancerre, but this is really good value, right? This is something that's like qualitatively better, more interesting. It's different, right? And it's tremendously cheap for what it is, right? You should try that. And now you've just upsold someone through the lens of hospitality and you've made the restaurant more profit, right? So this is not a cog exercise, right? This is a straight profitability exercise. And cogs, in my opinion, are the absolute worst metric to use to manage a beverage program, right? Cogs are an outcome.
Mhm.
It's not a strategy.
It's funny, we talk about visualization and what people see and what they perceive as a deal or whatever it may be, right? Like, it's what marketing is. Anytime you drive past a fast food place, right, there's some sort of marketing going out. And that's why it's constantly changing of what their special is or what they're selling. It may not cost them anything different right now. It's exactly like you said. The cost was the cost. But the product could be sitting, or it could be like, hey, this is a great time to try to push this because we're gonna have a new thing coming out. Whatever it is, there's a reason and a method behind it. And it's not about, like you said, like it's a way to engage with people and something that they also may not have regularly have access to in that moment. And if you're giving people the opportunity to try something potentially they couldn't typically afford, that's also great hospitality. It's all about the experience that we're selling and how do we make money at the same time.
Well, it's great hospitality. It's also excellent marketing, right? This
I
is
know.
marketing strategy. The menu, your menu, whatever it is, your food menu, your beverage menu, that is your marketing tool. It is the tool that you are using to sort of highlight the things that you do and your restaurant. What makes you special,
Mhm.
right? And from what I just described, the downstream effects of embracing a true strategy, a real strategy like the one I just described with pricing, right? You unlock all these things, right? So people come in, they perceive value, they order something that maybe they wouldn't have because they didn't have access to it, or it's a little bit more affordable, right? You just created a point of engagement. And when people engage, if your staff is trained, they can start asking questions, right? And you can elevate someone's experience, right? But you need them as an active participant in that to do it, right? So you're creating those gateways, right? You're creating those points of engagement, and then hopefully you're capitalizing on them. And if you capitalize on them when they leave, they're going to think to themselves, man, that was such a great experience. I have to take Colleen there next week. She would love this restaurant. I can't wait to go back, right? You get word of mouth, you get repeat visits, you get all the things. Like your marketing was successful, right? And once again, beverage is one lever to pull on, culinary is another, service is another, and you better be hitting all those points. But as operators, you got to start thinking differently about it. They have to start thinking outside the box.
I think the common theme that I've heard from anyone I talked to this past year is everyone has to stop saying, well, it's the way we've always done it. Like, that's great. The world has so changed. It's so drastically different. But the concept of hospitality is giving experiences. And if we can't do that, then what are we doing to begin with? Why are you here? Why are you running this business if you don't want to give experiences that are two-way street? Like you said, it's that two-way conversation with your table or customer on the other side of the bar or whatever it is, a catering event. And like that's another thing is when people put on events, there's an opportunity to offer something without being like, oh, well, this bottle always costs $185. Why don't you talk about maybe if you did lower that for an event of this nature, you are spreading goodwill with these people and giving them something that they could sell back to another organization. Like, hey, this company took really good care of me. I think that we should go back.
I mean, when I was at Porterhouse in the early days, this is 06, 07, Michael Lamonaco, right? Chef and owner of Porterhouse, closing, RIP, by the way, very sad, end of this month. But Michael always used to say, he was like, people are going to leave and they're going to tell 5 to 10 people about us. And that's how we're going to last forever. Right.
Mhm.
It was like in his head, it was something that was like preached. to me over and over and over again so
Mhm.
early on of like, we need people talking about us when they leave. We need people marketing to their friends about us. Later in the later stages of my career, and maybe this is the major food group effect because major food group doesn't need this because they're like Instagram famous, right? They have the marketing machine behind them already. But like
Right.
normal restaurants, that should be the mentality, right? Like, and I don't see that mentality in a lot of restaurants that I work with. It's novel to them, this concept, right?
Marketing budgets are non-existent for a lot of groups. They can't or restaurants. They can't afford a marketing department, a marketing team. They rely on their staff for social media. And that's actually, I think relying on your staff to spread the word of what they do is really you're empowering them to like say, this is where I work. Come see me. But you have to make sure they're also trained and educated in what it is that they're selling. Cause I told you, I believe wholeheartedly in grassroots and word of mouth when it comes to a restaurant, because that's where I will dine 9 times out of 10 is if someone recommended something to me 'cause I get social media review platforms, and I've said this very a lot of times. I have a love-hate for it because it can be great or it can be catastrophic to the business depending on how a review is responded to, correct? But if you have staff that are sharing what you're doing in their social media presence, then make sure they have all the tools to keep doing that when the person comes in the door.
Yeah. Well, and you know, and I think providing your staff with some tools is super important, right? You know, one of the things I'll give you a really, really simple example to this, right? Like, well, what does it mean to give my staff a tool or some leeway or what it is, right? So, you know, wines by the glass. You were a waitress for a really long time, right?
I was.
How how often did you get yelled at by a manager about like your pour on table 14 was super high. You're over pouring your wines by the glass. You know, I saw you give that guest a topper. How are we going to account for that, right? Wines by the glass become this point of friction
Mhm.
in this environment, right? This is very, very common. You're overpouring, the waste is too high, whatever it is, right? So what you know what I tell operators to do? I'm like, listen, guys, this is what we're gonna do, right? Your standard pour in this restaurant is gonna be 5 ounces. This is what that looks like in a glass. Put up an example, right? Now, on the back end, in your management software, every time somebody orders a wine by the glass, I'm gonna deplete 6 ounces. Right? We're not gonna change the price. We're just gonna increase the amount of wine that we deplete. And we're gonna
Mhm.
build this reservoir, right? Of like extra wine, available wine, right? So when your server wants to make a call and give someone a topper because they have 1 ounce of white wine left and they haven't finished their halibut yet, do you know what that gesture does? When that server comes over and is like, hey, here's a little topper, right? Enjoy the rest of your meal. And it goes so far, right?
Right.
That 2 ounces of wine that cost the restaurant $1, like now you just made somebody's night, right? Or when somebody complains, like that pour seems a little non-generous, right? That pour seems a little light. Sure, no problem. Here you go. I'll top you up. There you go. Have some more. No problem. And you remove all friction, right? And people are like, man, they're so hospitable there. They take care of me. They get it. Right.
I mean, you just said the word. That is what we're supposed to be doing. And obviously, I'm a huge proponent for caring for yourself as, with your mental health and physical health. But a lot of that mental health comes from your leadership. Like, are they aware of how they're training you or how they're engaging with you? And like you said, instead of berating someone for doing something that potentially could breed goodwill to a return customer, or that they're appreciative just to be appreciative, you're creating a great culture to be a part of. Like, empowering your staff to make correct judgment calls, I think is huge. I mean, we all have worked in the industry long enough to know that there's people that get, sloshed when they're doing shots behind the bar because they're trying to get a bigger tip. Like, I'm not condoning that. I'm saying there is a way to empower your staff to make a judgment call that can help the restaurant be successful for the next time they come in, and like empowering them to do that or the right way in a safe way and all the things. But to your point, it's so true. Like, just make your errors, acknowledge the error. Like, this is how we're going to do this now because it's going to happen and it's going to be inevitable.
Well, just yeah, address it and use it to your advantage.
Hmm.
Right? You know, it's
Yeah.
like, but this comes with like some level of kind of critical thinking and
Yes.
intention thought. And this to me is kind of my competitive edge, right? These are lessons I've learned over my 20 plus career in beverage, right? It's like to me, it's pretty simple. I explain that concept to operators and they're like, oh my God, that's such a great idea. It's like, yeah, well, yes, it is, right? But like everyone should do this, right? But they don't have the bandwidth to kind of think through it, and it's not there's no judgment there, right? It's just simply they're focused on other things because they're busy running a restaurant, you know?
Well, again, it's you can't not everybody can staff for every position that they need at this time. Like it is what it is. We are in it. We are in the thick of it right now, but I told you before and I really appreciate the way that you're, IBEV as you guys refer to it, excuse me, is to make it accessible to people in a way that you don't feel like you're being talked at. You're being a part of the conversation. It's to your specific business. What is it that you're hoping to accomplish? Can I take a look at this? It's not like send me all of your filings for the last year and I'll tell you where you're making mistakes because that can come off really harsh for people. And it's also it can come off like you're embarrassed. Like you're not there to embarrass anyone. You're like, I want to help you and this is how I know how.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And I
it's
mean,
really nice.
thank you. I appreciate that because I mean, you nailed it, right? I mean, whenever I do discovery for a client, I do ask for things. I'm like, I'd like to see your inventory and I'd like to see your wine list and I'd like to see your sales and I'd like to compare those things, right? But, hey, this is what I'm seeing, right? Let's talk about that. And is this intentional? Is this part of your strategy? If so, let's see if we can't hone it a little bit more. Or if you're not thinking about it at all, well, then here's my opinion,
Mhm.
right? And what I think you should do.
Make them a part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's you got to ask a lot of questions. I mean, as a good servers ask questions, very, thoughtful, tactical questions, and they do things in a way that the best ones, right? The best servers do things in a way to where you don't even feel it. The experience is like circling around
Yes.
you and you don't even know what's happening.
And I was just telling Amy on her episode, when I go out and someone's like, "Can I read you the specials?" I always say yes, because that is what they are there to do. If maybe if they're in the weeds, I'll say, if you have time, like I'll read the room. But for the most part, I'll say yes. And I want to hear what they recommend because this is what they do for a living. This is where they spend all their time. They're the best person to sell me, like, what should I get? And if they're they are a great server and they've been trained properly, they're going to try to get me to buy the things that are high ticket items, but also put in there the things that might be more affordable to like let me decide. That's a
My
good server.
For sure. I mean, one of my most favorite questions to ask any server is, put in your order, right? Do the thing. Everyone orders what they want, right? And before the server leaves, say, did I miss anything? Is there anything I didn't order that's not to be missed? Right.
Love that.
And it's like, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to be like, you really need to have this, whatever
Mhm.
this is in restaurant, it's like, you should really try this.
Are you a dessert person? Do you stay for dessert?
I am an unapologetic dessert person. Like I will over order dessert, like instantly.
So I share this story and I'll share it with you because you can appreciate this being in the industry. I went on a blind date once. This is like when Tinder really first came out and I was in Chicago before I met my husband. And this guy ordered me a mango margarita and I was like, man, read the room. I am not a mango margarita kind of
Strong
girl. But
choice, buddy. Okay. Yeah.
and then we got like tapas and he was like eating off my plate and I was like, whatever, that's fine. But like he didn't order anything that I wanted. Like we didn't have a conversation about it. She's like, okay, well, here we are. And then it came for dessert, and he was like, "No, we're good." And if I had had a fork that could have stabbed, I'd be like, "You first of all, I will get dessert. I get dessert every place I go. I love dessert, and I always ask the server, like, is there anything special you're doing? Like, I wanna try it. Will you have it again?" I love dessert because the most people that offer desserts on their menus, they're usually being made in-house or they're from, like, a bakery that's in their area, and it does boost the business, but it also is something that I just really enjoy, and it's, like, a huge part of my dining out experience. It's not an afterthought, but, yeah, I always share that story, and I was like, "You are out of your mind if I'm like, no, I'll never see you again." So my husband talks about that. He's like, I got her chocolate cake when she wouldn't go out on a date with me, and I brought it to her." And I was like, "And that's how I that's how I want her."
And that's how I landed her. Yeah.
Yes, it's
Yeah, for sure.
but and it's also that is another easy sell is, like, the full experience, and then the after drink if they want it, or coffee or espresso or whatever it may be.
Look, I really, really struggle with the whole concept of sales, right? I think it's very, very important. I think you have to train people, right?
Hmm.
And everyone likes to talk about, well, you need to read your guest, read your guest, read your guest, right? But like no one has bothered to actually define what that means, right? Like
Hmm.
beyond like, oh, look at their watch and what kind of shoes are they wearing and are they carrying a Birkin bag or not? Or, right? Like,
Right, right, right.
it's like when I think about reading a guest, I shared with you I just spent the weekend in Oklahoma City with my business partner, right? We were doing a bunch of things for iBevs. And we went out to this restaurant, really straightforward, simple seafood restaurant. The chef was just nominated for a Beard Award. It was phenomenal, right? It was absolutely phenomenal. The food was great. The restaurant was simple and straightforward. It looked like a converted gas station. Like it looked like we were like eating in like an old carport, which was fine, right? They
Cool.
they like dolled it up, right? Like no fuss, no muss. Like tables, chairs, they didn't have wine glasses. They had tumblers, which I love, by the way, right? In that
Good for
environment,
them.
great. But and the server for the most part was great. Nailed it. Nailed everything, right? I would say 9.5 out of 10. That point five, look, we were four people. We all started with a cocktail. We ordered a bottle of white wine. We were out of wine. Two of us had a glass of wine to finish
Hmm.
our entrees, right? Like she came over, did the whole, would you like dessert? We have one. We're like, of course we want dessert. You should probably sell two. She's like, great. And then she walked away, right? And I'm like, man, like you missed it. That moment, if she had just been like, I'm gonna bring you guys some Amaro. How does that sound? I'm gonna bring you a couple things to look at for an after dinner drink, right? Never ask a yes or no question. I'm a huge proponent of that. But like, hey, I'm gonna do this for you in that moment, she would have added an extra $50 to the check. We would have been like, hell yeah, I'll have an Amaro, no problem. Bring that. Let's go. Reading your
Bringing an
table is
experience that you're having.
yeah, like reading the table is like, dude, we're a table of four people that are obviously not scared about consumption. So
Hmm.
you should lean into that.
Yeah, right. You're there for the whole thing.
Yeah. It's like you're
Hmm.
not you're not waiting on your mom and dad,
Yep.
right? The service you would give your mom and dad is different than the service you would give your four best
Hmm.
friends, as an example, right?
Yeah, and it's okay to read the people that you're serving. Like my girlfriend Julie was and is amazing. She gets it from the moment they walk in the door, from the moment they get to their car, like the whole thing. And she trains her staff that way. Like they are here to spend their money on vacation and they don't get to do this very often. Give them everything. Give them all you got.
Yeah. Well, at least offer it, especially the people that are imbibing. So like, that's a huge sort of, I don't know, training point of
Hmm.
view, right?
Yeah.
Or just like, hey, your staff needs to be thinking this way.
And is that where you feel like that's benefiting the industry with what you guys are doing? Is it really is talking about all of these things that are already at your disposal. Let's just work on it and let's revamp it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, like there's not a day that goes by that I don't feel like an imposter. Imposter
Mhm,
syndrome's real.
mhm,
Like, why would people pay attention to me or listen to me? What do I know? Type
mhm.
situation. And then I think to myself, well, I know a lot, right? And things like this that seem obvious to me, to you, to kind of
Right.
industry professionals, I have to remind myself that a lot of people don't, they're not so obvious to a lot of
Mhm,
people, right? And I have to kind of keep reminding myself of that
mhm.
like you do have a lot of experience and you do know some stuff and you should keep talking because eventually somebody's going to find benefit in it.
Right. And people, when they're so in the thick of it, it is hard to see. It's like when you're in like a at home and something catastrophic happens and you don't know what it is that you need, and someone's like, "Hey, I'm just gonna bring you dinner so you don't have to think about it." It's kind of like that. It's like a little lifeline that you have access to that you're just offering people and they can take it for what it is or not. And I think that you're approaching it the right way. You're not a I know everything. There's always room to grow. I want to learn about you and your business. And like I told you before, be authentically who you are because it's going to get you so much further. Our industry can be cutthroat sometimes, and to be a kind person in a cutthroat industry is very welcomed for people right now.
Yeah, well, I certainly try.
Yeah.
It's like I think leading with just sort of compassion and thoughtfulness is something that's often off overlooked in our industry.
And as people know about me, I am such an empath. Like I want to feel all the emotions. I want to be there for you, and I want to help grow the industry in the way that it deserves to, evolve and sustain for should my kid decide to go into it. And like I think that's a lot of us. Like, what are we going to leave behind in regards to a legacy for our little ones, and if they want to be in this industry?
I had somebody ask me that recently, how would you feel about your
Mm.
son pursuing a career in restaurants? And, I feel like probably for most parents, I immediately balked. I was like, no, anything but restaurants. But then I put some thought into it and I was like, that wouldn't be the worst thing. It really wouldn't. It would
Santa brought my daughter knives for Christmas and she was 4. And I know that people are like, "What do you mean?" But they have knives for little people so they can learn how to cut and do all those things. And we just as a family decided if this she saw mommy working in a restaurant, she would come to work with me. She saw me waiting tables, saw me managing, saw me behind the bar, and she was so proud of me. And I was like, if this is what she wants to do, then I will do whatever it takes to make it a safer place for her. So some of that stuff that I experience, I hope she doesn't have to. And I'll beat my drum until people tell me to stop anymore. But like there's so much growth and it really is a beautiful place. I met my husband there. Like I love this industry. We have 2 beautiful children because of it. Like I get to meet people like you from all over and it's okay to ask for help and like put that like little like, please someone throw me a lifeline somewhere. And I think there's a lot that people can learn from you and your business partner. What is your hope as the business grows?
I'm hopeful to be of service, to
Mhm.
help, honestly. I'm hopeful to kind of like use my knowledge for, something bigger than just like a corporate machine that prints a lot of money.
Mhm.
I think that, I live in New York City. I'm a lifer, right? I'm raising a kid here. He goes to public school. Like I'm in it to win it, right? I don't imagine I'm going to leave. And I think New York is a wonderful, when being in New York for the last 20, 25 years, like New York is a wonderful place of like diversity and inclusion and all these things. And, I can't help but feel that like restaurants are for the most part kind of boring. There are exceptions to that, right? There are chefs and operators doing interesting things here, but mom and pops are so important to just the diversity and the inclusion in this city, in any city, and I want to see people successful. One of my clients runs kind of a crazy West Village restaurant downtown, and we've really been able to move the needle for him in very very positive ways, right?
Awesome.
He's done 20% more in top line beverage revenue since working with us, right? Just as an example, and that has really sort of helped his business, right? And it
Awesome.
helps keep people employed, and
Mhm.
it's like he's looking to open a second one now, and I think this is important. I think it's important that we don't get taken over by, you know, just really soulless sort of
Mhm.
restaurant groups and chains.
Well, you are definitely a person that's you walk the walk and talk the talk. Like you are one of us. You are a lifer that has put your dues in and you can acknowledge that there's room to improve. And that's when people can say that, then that's how you know you're a real lifer. Like there's always ways to improve. And like I don't know it all, but I really love what I'm doing. So I'm gonna share it with you. That's incredible. So if people want to learn more about iBev or you, how can they get in contact?
LinkedIn's great. Brad Nugent on LinkedIn. I'm very, very active there. Also, innovativebeveragestrategies.com, but either way, like LinkedIn's the best. I love having conversations.
I really appreciate you taking time to chat with me on Hospitality Bites. I want to thank everybody for listening. Please follow Hospitality Bites wherever on social media. Visit my website, hospitalitybites.com. Follow my friends at Walk and Talk Media who host this podcast episode with me. And as I always say, please be kind to yourself and one another. And thank you again, Brad, for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Colleen.